Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this university session on our development tools. Super excited to have you. This will be a rather speedy session, so we're gonna breeze through the development products as a refresher. I'm very happy with the turnout today. I can see that some of you guys are customers for some time. Some of you probably never have used the product, so we're going to try and address both of those audiences. I actually have a total of 2 PowerPoint slides today, so we're going to be looking at everything live, and we'll essentially talk about our development tools as well as ScanEasy, which is not just for developers, but for administration as well as for hybrids. And I do want to point out the fact that for those of you who've known our developer tools, maybe you are a customer, but you never really used them in the past. These are tools that we built for client development, even though ViewEasy will be a tool that actually helps a lot with Xpages and web development as well when it comes to managing views and columns, because those are still important. However, the interesting thing is that with HCL Nomad, the fact that you will be able to access your notes native Domino applications without doing any extra development on the iPad and then later on various other machines. So it will be pretty much a bring your own device sort of thing with your native applications. This really puts a spotlight on native client development once again. And so that's why the Ytria tools will really be something, once again, these development tools that you just won't really be able to live without, because it's really, if there is a time for this, the time is now to revamp those old looking applications. We're going to actually take a look at some of those examples later on today. So let's get started with our demo time. So we're just going to be doing live demos today. Let me switch over to my VM here. We will talk about ScanEasy quite a bit, as I believe as a developer myself, this is something that's really crucial to have a good understanding of. We'll then talk about ViewEasy and Action Bar Easy. These are the pure production development tools that we have. We'll mention Design Prop Easy and take a quick look at what it does and how it helps you, as well as we might actually take a look at Agent Easy and Console Easy, just as some sort of a sneak peek. We actually have a second university session coming up tomorrow, same time, which will be focusing on the administration side of things. That will be an hour and a half. So like I said, today we're going to try and finish everything within the hour. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask them. If you have any feedback, as in, I tend to go a bit fast, so don't hesitate to interrupt me or ask any sort of questions. There's a Q&A section here. We're going to make sure that nobody leaves here without any answers to their questions. The more the interaction in our experience, the better the experience is for everyone. So I will definitely do some regular breaks to take a look at the Q&A section if you have any questions. Okay. So that's enough with the introduction. Let's actually get started with talking about ScanEasy. ScanEasy, as you probably all know, is our flagship tool, pretty much. So this is the tool that most of our users are using. This is a tool that you can use as a developer or an administrator for really a host of tasks. And it's definitely something that I personally use 20 to 30 times a day. We do have some of the tools in the administration department that help you with gigantic projects and really save you weeks and weeks of work. But those are not necessarily always tools that you would use every day. This is not true for ScanEasy. So let's actually take a look at what we do with ScanEasy. I'm going to use 2 applications here as examples for some of the scenarios that we'll be looking at. This is actually a standard Domino directory template. And then there's another one that's going to be a bit more basic. Definitely, I don't want you guys to have to learn what my applications look like or all that. So we're going to focus on these applications. So what is it that ScanEasy does? Essentially, ScanEasy is a Swiss Army knife for anything that is inside your notes databases. However, we focus on 2 very important things when it comes to understanding what you have in your databases. First, one of the biggest added values is that where as developers or admins, we tend to have to write a lot of notes views, right? Special admin views to look at our data from a certain angle. This is not the case with ScanEasy. With ScanEasy, you will never have to write those views again, just so you can look at certain angles of your data. You'll see how we can create reports, how we can understand item values from hundreds of thousands of documents in really just a few clicks, all without utilizing physical notes views. And the other thing that ScanEasy helps a lot with is we have all those tasks where you have to do a bit of data massaging, right? Think about as a developer, when you're working on an application and you need to add a new status field somewhere, right? Or you need to add some new piece of information to your forms, which will work fine for the documents being created in the future, but you do need to unify your documents as in the documents that you created before. And so those would be the sort of things where you'd probably use init scripts or one-time agents that you'll never use again. Those sorts of things will be really a breeze with ScanEasy. So without having to write any agents, without any sort of coding, you can evaluate what you want to change and you can make the changes using ScanEasy directly and without any programming. So without further ado, we will take a look at ScanEasy. Now, just a little bit of a refresher, if there's anybody here who never used the tools really, everything we do is done in C++. So we have our own executables. And whenever you launch one of our products, we will create a new node session. We'll authenticate that node session with the ID file that's being used in the nodes client. But the good thing is that we're completely independent from your nodes client. So essentially, you can think of our tools as special nodes clients for technical people to have a better understanding of certain areas of Domino. So the first thing that we need to look at with ScanEasy is how do I launch ScanEasy? Like I said, ScanEasy is all about documents. So one of the most basic features here is that I can pull up a document in the UI or simply select one in a notes view, and I can simply click ScanEasy. And instead of the all too well-known annoying property box, you will get a much larger interface where we show you everything that is inside that physical document. So what is it that we show you here? First of all, we display everything in what we call the Flexi Grid. And this is an interface that we use across all of our products in the entire portfolio, including Microsoft products. So this is an interface we've been working on for a long time, and it's super powerful. For example, you can grab any of the column headers. And in this case, I'm looking at everything that's inside my document. I can quickly drag and drop any column header to categorize the information, which in this case is my items. And so with a Shift minus and Shift plus, which we all know from Domino, from categorized views, I can collapse and expand those categories. Thereby, I can really quickly identify any of the items of my choice, in this case, all of my text items, okay? So what you get with the individual documents module, where you just open ScanEasy on an individual document. First of all, we give you a lot more information than what you have access to normally. So not only do you get all of your fields, the item names, the item values, but we also give you a host of really interesting info. For example, we give you the sequence number of each item, which pretty much translates to how many times has this item been modified, right? We'll tell you about the modification dates of those items, all of the different flags, like is this item actually part of the summary? Do I have any items here that are not part of the summary? Do I have any encrypted items, as well as the sizes? So I can, using the Flexi Grid, where you can pretty much double sort anything that you see, you can really quickly get the largest item of your choice, the largest item in this document. Now, there's another thing is the document level. So you can see there's some note level information. We give you the unique ID, which you can easily copy for your reference. We actually have a lot of different search features. One of them is the search by unique ID. So this is where unique IDs come in very handy. We have a readers authors interface where we'll list all of the readers and all of the authors on this document. And if you expand it, you'll see which field it belongs to. And should I have any response documents connected to this document, I would actually have another tab here that would list every response document to this particular document. Now, the most important thing, though, is what I can do with my document. Because the thing is that ScanEasy really brings the most out of Domino as a non-relational database system, in a sense that we have absolute and full flexibility with this individual document. What does that mean? I can actually at any point create a new item inside this document, define its type, put in a value of my choice, and I would have to save my changes on a note with a Control S, but basically we just created a brand new item directly in this document backend. Similarly, I'll be able to quickly change any of my existing item values, all without doing any scripting, right? So any item value, and it's not just a value that I can change, I could actually change the item type as well as the different flags down here, as well as the item name itself. So we can really enjoy a full flexibility over individual documents. Now, I can of course do the same thing here when it comes to removing items. So I could select one or even multiple items that I might not need in some cases. I mean, these I would definitely need, but I can still pretend I don't. So let's delete those items and save my changes on a note. So we really do have this full flexibility, which is awesome. What's even more awesome than that is you'll see later on, as we talk about multiple documents, is that we have the exact same powers over groups and subsets, or even all of our documents in this database. So before we go there, let's actually just quickly go through what else we have. As you can see on the left-hand side, we basically give you a tree of everything that you have in your databases. For example, on the database level, you can, with one click, create and assign new replica IDs to your database. The moment you save it, we'll basically change the replica ID right away. You have the access control list module, where this is essentially an embedded module from ACL Easy, which is one of our admin tools. But it's super powerful because we give you not only your ACLs with all of their properties, but we also let you expand anything that may have groups and other groups inside, so you can quickly understand who are the people that have access to this database right here, right now, regardless of whether that access is a product of being part of a group or not. So you can actually see the expand nested groups feature, where we go through every group and basically give you everybody that are inside those groups. Yeah, so this is pretty cool. If you think this is cool, you should definitely take a look at ACL Easy, because ACL Easy does this on an entire server level. Then we have the design section. We won't have the time to actually cover this today. There's some really neat stuff you can do here, but what you will notice is that we're not competing with the designer client here. We essentially just give you everything that is inside those design elements. So this is what a view looks like from the backend perspective. You will actually see that the dollar formula will show you the view formulas and stuff like that. We have some recorded webinars where we play with some of this stuff, and you can do some pretty amazing things, but we won't have time for that today. Then we have the document section. We'll get back to this in a second. But before that, I did want to show that we also manage profile documents. So we give you a list of all of your profile documents. You can, once you select one of these profiles, you can really quickly deal with them just like as if they were standard notes documents. So what does that mean? I can, again, create new fields. I can define it, for example, as a names field, and I can use my nav to pick one of the servers that I want to use as a lookup here. So this is pretty cool stuff. I can work with my profiles real time. I can save them directly from here. I can actually create new profiles from the right-click menu, just like that. I can erase profile documents directly from the right-click menu if that would be something that I need to do. And what's even better is that we even deal with user-specific profile documents. So if you were to have a user that's complaining about some language profile or preference profile not properly working, those are the sorts of things that are not very easy to deal with from a developer standpoint, because you'd have to use the user's ID to actually see what's going on. So here we can quickly edit any user-specific profile documents. We can even create and remove user-specific profiles. So we really give you everything there is to know about profile documents. Very similarly, we also show you your deletion stubs. So that's another thing that's pretty cool, is we don't normally see deletion stubs, but in ScanEasy, you've got the deletion stub section. I can use my deletion stub explorer, where I actually have the ability to zero in on a specific date range to actually see, okay, what was deleted between these two dates. And then when I hit search, we'll give you all of your deletion stubs and all the information about them, such as the unique IDs, when they were deleted physically in this file, or when they were originally deleted, stuff like that. And you can actually remove your deletion stubs directly from here, which is also pretty awesome. So that's our deletion stub section. And then one more thing that you'll notice is the conflict section. This is actually one of the most popular features in ScanEasy, is that we actually show you all of your conflicts in the database. And not only do we show you your conflicts, but you can also resolve them in a sophisticated way, which is what we call the conflict solver. So the conflict solver is available under tools. And when you pull it up, you'll actually notice we create a list of every profile, every conflict document in your database. In this case, I just have the one. And then we'll let you compare the parent with the conflict side by side, item by item. You'll notice that some of them are different, but a lot of them are actually going to be the same. So that's why we have this little button up here to say, I just want to see the fields that are different. And then I can make an educated decision on what I want to keep. So instead of the binary choice that we normally have, which is I either remove the conflict or the parent, we have a much more powerful way of dealing with this stuff. So the moment that I selected the values that I want to keep and I hit solve, we'll merge the documents according to your selection and we'll remove the conflict. So that's our conflict solver tool. Now let's talk about the way that we deal with multiple documents. And I actually brought an example here. When I look at the directory database that we are working with, I have made a mistake because I did import all of my phone numbers using LotusScript, but they won't show up in this view. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm sure that the information is somewhere in there, but I'm not sure what I did wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to deal with that problem. And the way we're going to do that is first I'm going to pull up ScanEasy on a test document, right? I just want to basically find the information. So I quickly do a sort on the values, and that will make it pretty easy to identify the item that holds the phone number. And we can already see the problem is that the item name is incorrect because it's office phone NR instead of office phone number. So I'm going to quickly sort by the item name and see that the field that I should have used here would have been the office phone number field, right? Which doesn't hold any data. So how do I solve this problem? I'm just going to navigate to the left and then expand my document section. This is already a gigantic added value because essentially what I get here is a list of every document in my database, and we categorize those documents based on the form that they're using. So I can very quickly identify all the person documents in my database. I can expand that section and then basically say, I want to actually be sure that this is the field that's used for all of those person documents and not the correct one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this selection of person documents. And this is something that might not be very intuitive at first, but this is one of the most important features in ScanEasy. It's called a diff. The diff is where everything starts when it comes to grouping, dealing with groups of documents. So when I hit diff, what happens is we go through every document in your selection, which is 1,552, and we give you a list of every item that exists in at least one of those documents. So for example, you'll notice the test item that I just created before, and we actually give you a status message about them as well. So we tell you that this field doesn't exist everywhere, right? For some of the fields, like the state, it exists everywhere and has different values across my documents. And then there might actually be some fields, such as the form field or the type, which not only exist everywhere, but also hold the same value across every single document in our My Selection. So the interesting part here is that we try to give you the means to deal with different types of documents as if they were relational data tables, right? Because in a relational data table, you would expect to see only this sort of stuff, right? So this would be the only category you see, is that the item exists everywhere and it has different values across my documents, because that's what a relational data table would look like. And so you wouldn't see this sort of stuff where something doesn't exist everywhere. Now, the interesting part, coming back to our example here, is that if I look at the office phone number field, we can right away see that the office phone number field does not hold any value across any of these documents. So this would consequently mean that we're actually safe removing this item. And that's what I'm going to do. I simply just right-click the item directly from here, and I will delete it from all of our documents. So as you can see, we have the exact same capabilities and flexibility over groups of documents that we did with individual ones. So I just removed that item that I didn't need. And then I have the Office Phone NR field, which is where I actually have my data, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply right-click this item, and I'm just going to rename it. I'm going to put in a new name, and I'm going to hit OK. And so what happens here is we're keeping the data, but we're renaming the item across all these documents. So what we're expecting is that the moment I go back to my notes client and refresh the view, now we have put the data into the right field name. And so you can see it's thinking, which is good news. And those are my phone numbers, right? So that's a quick example of an investigation on a problem and making an educated choice on how to solve it, all without just writing up a load of script agent and hoping that it works out, which it doesn't always do, right? So that's one example. Now, let's get back to some of the added values that we discussed earlier, right? So what would be a situation where we need to create a special view? Let's work with the salaries database, and let's actually see, what if I needed to create a special report in Excel that includes the salary, the manager, department, pretty much everything that I have in here? Well, I could open up ScanEasy quickly on the database itself, and expanding the document section, you guys will also realize that this is a really simple DB because there's only just one form that is being used. So these are my person documents in there. However, they're not the same as in an app. They're much, much more simple. So there's just a few of these fields here, right? So let's actually pick some of those that I need, which would be the car allow, department, first name, last name, manager, and yearly gross salary. I will hit the values button. And essentially with the values button, we just read out those item values across all of our documents in this selection. So essentially, I just created a view on the fly without technically having created an actual view. So all of this is stored in memory, right? So I've got one column per item that I selected. And so that's my report. And that's one of the beauties of the FlexiGrid, is that if I was to export this at any point, I can do a Control-C, and I can quickly put that into an Excel sheet just like this. Yeah? So it's super, super easy to actually report this information with just a Control-C, Control-V. There's, of course, multiple ways to do some reporting. So from the tools and options submenu, you have the export dialog, where we can do XML, HTML export, a lot of different things. Now, the real beauty of this is that I have all this data read out, and I can actually analyze my data. So for example, I could quickly categorize by manager, right? So this would have been an additional notes view with a categorized column on the left. And so we just did that with one drag and drop. Now I can use a Control-Shift-G, which is the ungroup everything. I use that all the time to get rid of all the groupings. But what if I had a requirement to say, I want to figure out which department is paying their employees the most, right? So this would be like a rather sophisticated view with a categorized column on the left and then some totals and stuff like that. Well, let me show you how we do that. So first, I'm going to do a category based on the department value. So those are my different departments. And then I'm going to open up what we call the grid manager, where we basically have an entry for every column that is shown in the grid, or that could be shown in the grid. I will then navigate to the yearly gross salary, and here I have the opportunity to actually calculate the summaries for every category. Now, the beauty here, as you can see, we actually calculated the total of all salaries per department. I can actually sort by this as well, which is pretty cool and much better than in notes, but there we go. So we just sorted on those categories. So we find that it's the manufacturing department that's actually paying the most. They're also the most amount of people in there, right? So that kind of makes sense. Now, what if we were to look at the average? Well, I can just quickly change this because all of this is dynamic. So I'm going to right away see that the largest average is this one, and then the executive, and those both include one person. So of course, that's why the average would go up so much. But in any case, this is really, really interesting stuff. And like I said, all of this is dynamic. So if I was to look at this from another angle, I could simply get rid of the grouping, group by my manager value, and then you'll see that we still have the same totals, the same calculation going on here. So really, you can do a lot of stuff directly from here. Now, another thing that's important is that should I ever have the need to add new columns, right? Because I'm not gonna say that if you're reading out some item values from a couple 100,000 documents that it won't take time, because it will take a bit of time. And so let's say that you did read out a couple 100,000 documents and some of their item values, and then you realize, hey, I forgot to put one item in there, right? So what you can do is you can actually add your column directly from here. For example, I could say that the car allow is not very nice, right? So I'm gonna make it nicer. I'm gonna say car allowed, and I'm just gonna do a quick formula. Something like this, right? So I'm going to essentially calculate this on the fly. You'll see that the moment I add the column, there is a bunch of red question marks. I'm going to hit evaluate here. And that's when we go through and gather those values. This is much, much faster than if I was to redo the whole thing and read out all those different item values. So I can add a bunch of new columns. And in fact, not only can we do formulas here, but we could do field information, such as field values. So I could add a field that I forgot to add here before, or I could do note related information. So the document related information, such as these, I could look at the sequence number, the added in this file and stuff like that. Or we could even, like I said, define all of our formulas. And there's really a lot you can do with this, because you could even do lookup formulas and things that you would not normally be able to do from standard notes views, right? So that is our values interface. Now let's go with an example here, and let's take a look at some modification stuff, right? So how do I modify my documents? Let's go with an example and say that I have a financial crisis at this company, and I want to make sure, well, I actually, unfortunately, have to take those company cars away from anybody who makes less than $50,000. So how do I do that? Well, we know that this is about the item value in the car allow field. So I'm just going to go through the yearly gross salaries and the car allow fields. And essentially, from a programming standpoint, we're talking about two if statements here, right? So let's actually do a values quickly. We're just getting the car allow and the yearly gross field values. Now I'm going to say, let's use a filter on the yearly gross column. That's always this little icon on the right. And so I'm going to use a number filter and say, give me everything that's less than 50K. And then I'm going to categorize by the car allow, and that will show me that I have 56 employees who make less than $50,000 but still have a car. These are the ones that I need to take the cars away from. So what do? I select all of them here. And remember, all these things in the values panel actually represent documents, right? So I'm going to right-click these guys and say, add to a new My Selection. I'm going to call them No More Cars. I'll close this up, and you'll see that now we have a virtual little folder on the left. And remember, none of what we're doing actually creates folders or actual views to store the data. All of this is done in memory. So now I have what we call a little My Selection of people that I need to take those cars away from. You can see that the car allow is actually always 1 because it's the same value across all of them. So the only thing that's left to do is to say, I want to modify the values inside this item, and I'm going to set a fixed value of 0. And I'm going to hit apply, and we just made the changes. Now, I know I dock quite a bit. So if you just take the time I took with talking about it and just imagine doing all of this, this would have been like probably 5 seconds in total. Much, much faster than it usually takes to open the designer client, right? So those are the sorts of really basic things that we're talking about here. And I'm going to go into some, to a little bit more complex of a scenario. This is really just to give you a refresher / a quick intro to what ScanEasy can do, not so much about how to and where to click and all of that, but we have plenty of resources for that I will share at the end of the webinar. So let's go with a little bit more of a complicated scenario, right? Let's say I've got a situation here because in my names and address book, when I navigate to my groups, I can see that it's actually done really nicely. I have a bunch of different departments such as HR, manufacturing, marketing, etc. I even have sales here. And all of them are divided in the same way, which is that there is a department all group, which contains all of the country groups per department. So it's actually really logical, right? The only issue that I have is that I don't have that structure done for my IT people. So what if I had a requirement to create the group structure for everybody in IT, and then to actually feed the right people in there, right? So take everybody from IT and feed the IT Germany into the IT Germany group, etc. Kind of sounds like a nasty assignment, right? I'm not even sure that I would do coding for this or something. I don't know how I would do it without ScanEasy, to be honest with you. So let's see how we can do it with ScanEasy. So first, I'm going to use an existing structure as a reference. I'm going to take the HR groups here, and I'm simply going to do something that I can't believe I'm showing this in a live webinar. I would probably not like to do this otherwise, but I'm just going to do a duplication here. So the good thing about duplicating groups is that you only have one set of them selected, right? So not all of it, but only one set. So this means that now I have, say, the duplicate set selected. And I can actually, this is not something we mentioned, but you can, of course, open ScanEasy on one individual document directly by clicking on ScanEasy. But you can also select and open a bunch of documents using the action menus, open selected documents in ScanEasy. Yeah. So this will allow me to quickly deposit those documents into a new My Selection folder, which in turn will allow me to do a diff and basically look at the list name. Yeah. So that I know which groups I'm talking about. Now, we saw how to quickly retrieve some item values, right? I could use the values for that, but I can do something better. I can actually right-click this item and say, use this field as a title. And this will read out the item values and show it on the left. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want to basically replace everything that was HR and replace it with IT, right? But I don't know if it's just the list name that I need to take into consideration. So I'm going to basically say, let's select every item in the diff panel, and I'm going to use a feature called a search and replace. So you can see that we're basically saying, let's go for all fields, and I want to look for HR, and I want to replace everything by IT. Now, I'm using the preview functionality here because this will give me the results of what we find first, and then I can decide if I want to approve them, yeah? So you see that the items that we found were, for these 7 documents, it was the list name, which is essentially the group's name. And we were correct in selecting everything because I would have forgotten about the fact that the HR ACME all group contains all the HR subgroups. So now you can see that we're not just taking care of the search and replace in the group name, but everything in the membership as well. So this looks good to me. I'm going to say apply all. So what did we do? We just actually separated our duplicate groups from the original set. I'm going to reuse this as a selected title. You can see that this looks all good, right? So essentially, I have everything here set up to feed the right people into those groups. How do we do that? Well, let's actually go with a quick formula search. So there's a lot of different ways to search your databases, but we're going to use a formula search. So we're going to say, I'm going to say department equals IT. And I'm going to make this bigger. The resolution is interesting. So those are the 92 people in IT, right? So as you can see, we really use these little My Selection folders extensively. Now I have all the IT people in here, right? So the only thing I need to know is I need to know which country they work in, right? So that I can feed them into the right groups. Now, the way I could do that is actually I could right-click the country field and basically use its value as a title. That doesn't really give me much here, though, right? And there is one more thing that I think even the most advanced ScanEasy users don't really know, which is the ability to actually recategorize the selection. And the way you do that is the same way you select the display title. So I'm going to use a field value, namely the country field value, to recategorize my selection. What do we get? We just get all of our IT people categorized neatly in the countries that they belong to, that they work in. And then the only thing I will need to do here is I'm going to need to change the display titles so that I can get the full name of these people, right? So I'm going to say use this field as a title, and that's kind of what I need. Well, not exactly, because there's an issue here. That's actually a multi-value field, right? The full name. So I have two different values printed out here, and what I need is the first one, which is the hierarchical format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these documents as an example, because there's a formula for this. I'm just not sure what it is. So I'm going to use this little feature called the test a formula in this document. And we're going to say, well, what was it again, right? Because it's a bit confusing, because when you take an array, the first index in Lotus script would be 0, but I believe that in formulas it would be 1 instead of 0. So when I hit evaluate, using the real-time formula evaluation, this is pretty cool. This is indeed the formula that I will need. Good. So what we do next is I'm going to right-click my all IT people, and I'm going to change their display titles so that this is changed in every category. And I'm going to hit OK. So you will see that now we have the proper value, and we have our people in IT categorized by country. So this looks all good. So let's actually see what we can do with this. First, select the Canada category, and we're going to copy our tree titles to the clipboard. So everything that we printed out, we'll navigate to our IT Acme Canada group, and we're going to locate the members field, and we're just going to put this in there, save our changes, then repeat this with Germany as well. So right-click, copy tree titles, go to the IT Germany group, head over to members, and so on. So this is how long it takes to really create a brand new group structure and feed the right people in there. I know that this was really, really fast, and it was really just meant to be a quick introduction to what ScanEasy can do. I will need to wrap it up with ScanEasy because we have a bunch of other stuff we want to look at. But if you guys have any questions, please let us know. You will also notice that we have some new colors on our website. So yes, we actually did change our branding almost completely. However, the ytria.com/webcast sections is still alive, and you will see that we have a bunch of ScanEasy related webinars here that I would really highly recommend, where we take more time with talking about these features. This webinar is actually being recorded, so you will get the recording afterwards, and you can, that's what my coworkers always say, that's the only way that you can pause me, so that you'll get the recording and then you can rewatch some of this stuff. I hope that you learned something new, and let's actually proceed with some of the next tools. So the next tool that I want to talk about is Action Bar Easy. So this is usually a tool that we don't spend a lot of time on because we just don't do it. I mean, with Xpages, it was said that these client applications are dead. But, we always see at our customers is that there is still these really ugly looking applications out there, actually a lot of them. And so before you laugh at me, this application was actually made really ugly on purpose. But all these colors, I mean, I still see them at a lot of customer cases now. The thing is that even though it's super cool that you will have access to your Notes client applications from the iPad, not very long from now, those applications are still going to look like Domino version 4, even if they're on an iPad, right? So it's a good idea to actually make them a bit nicer. Now, with our tool Action Bar Easy, we have two different modules. Module number 1 is to deal with action bars. And this really sounds super easy, and it actually is. It's just the fact is that when you're dealing with your design elements and you're trying to set the action bars, it takes about 4 or 5 clicks to get to the place where you can change something about them, right? So what we do is super simple. We simply let you select any design elements that have actions or action bars on them, and then you can basically pull up the action bars module, where essentially we give you the action bar properties window, and you can use that window to set any properties and any settings for all of your designs in the application. What does that mean? You get to compose your settings once and basically deploy them across all of your design elements with just one click. So it's really the weapon to tackle a look and feel change, because those action bars are really important for a client application look and feel. So let's do that. Well, I actually have 2 different choices, because I could specify my settings manually, or I can actually be even more lazy than that, and I can select the design from somewhere, either in this application or another application. And I know that there's something where I worked on it a bit, and this was a long time ago, so it might actually still look vintage today, but it's going to look better than what we have today. So I'm going to open the other purchasing database, pick one of the views in there that I worked on a bit, and we're basically taking over those settings. You can see that these are the settings in question. We're going to hit apply on this, and we're just rolling it out to all of the designs. I need to reopen the application, and you can see that we did change those really ugly blue buttons to something else, right? So essentially what this means is that you can work with existing client applications, and we know that these can be really complex and really with hundreds of views and all of that, right? And they all have their own design settings and all of that. So instead of having to go through clicking for days and days to try and get the design that you want, you can maybe employ a UX person or somebody who's good with designs and essentially create one very nice looking design and then use the Ytria tools to roll that out to your client applications, right? Because it's just going to be one click. Another question is, of course, the question of action buttons, because those action buttons are not very easy to manage either, right? Especially on the iPad, this is going to be something interesting to keep in mind, is that instead of having like 30, 40 different action buttons next to each other, you're going to want to use submenus wherever you can, right? Because that's going to be much better on a smaller surface, especially if you're using your finger to open them up. So what we can do is we actually have an actions module as well, where we're going to deal with action buttons. And we're going to deal with them in a rather unconventional way. So what you make of this interface is essentially every design is represented as a column, and every entry here is an action button that is from left to right. So first of all, let's actually go to the options menu and hide the empty design elements so that we just have the ones with literally the action on them. And then let's say we have a bunch of views here, right? And this is something I always make a mistake with myself, is that it's hard to keep them consistent, right? The more views you have, the harder it is to keep them consistent. So let's take care of that first. Now you can always, with a double click, pull up the action properties, including the source code. Yeah? So for example, you can see the hide when formulas right here and right now. You can see that there are actually 3 actions that are meant for the accounting department and the accounting role, and there's actually 2 that are meant for managers only. So why don't we just put them into a new submenu, right, to make it look a bit better? So I'm just going to go ahead and insert a new submenu and say I'm going to call it accounting, and I'm going to label it accounting. Careful, because it's a formula. And so I'm going to pack these 2 in there, and then we're going to create a new one, which is for manager, and then we're going to label it manager, and this is those 2 actions, right? So the manager role is actually not something that I have at the moment, so I'm going to take it out so that we can see it later on. And so now we have our 2 new submenus, and it looks all good, right? However, we have a bunch of views where these actions are present, right? So one of the things we could do, if there's something that is missing from those views, then you might actually notice some of that. For example, there is no calculate VAT on some of these. I can actually drag and drop my actions to move them between different designs, or I can do a drag and drop with the shift key held so that I'm basically putting it in there. I can even change the order very, very quickly. So this is how we make it much easier to deal with your action buttons. And the question is I just made those nice changes on the all proposals view, right? Do I have to repeat this on every one of these views? Well, not really. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of their action buttons, and with the delete key, I'm removing them. And then I'm selecting everything here. And with the shift key held, I'm just going to drag and drop it to all of these views, hit save, and essentially we just made our views look consistent, right? So that's what we did. The new submenus, I go through and it's all the same buttons. Yeah. So I know this is not the definition of beauty, but you hopefully get the point that this is going to get really, really important later on to make sure that those applications look like the 21st century. And the obstacle that's in the way is really the mundane mess of it all, if you like, in the sense that you have to repeat this stuff normally without the Ytria tools 1,000 times to get that nice look and feel. This is something where Action Bar Easy can really help a lot. Okay, so that's one of the development tools, and the other one is called View Easy. View Easy is a little more complex. We worked on it a lot more than on Action Bar Easy because, you know, with X pages without action bars we're dead, which definitely is not the case. But with views, we have 3 different modules. So I'm actually putting this up on an application that is a bit more complex. There's 183 views on this. The 3 modules are as follows. We have the index management, which is pretty cool. This is actually the equivalent of show database on the server console, except for the fact that we don't do it using the server console. So you get all of your views, you get all of their index sizes. You can quickly find the largest indexes. You can see that the database barely contains any documents, which is why I have almost 0 index sizes here. But as you can imagine, this could be really interesting of an analysis to run on some larger applications. We actually show you the refresh and discard settings, and you can purge the indexes for 1 or multiple views directly from here. So that's kind of a small-ish module, but it's still something that can be very handy. Then we have the views module. Now, the views module is essentially an interface where we said that to edit view level properties, you have to do it one by one, right? You got to do it view by view, which is not very good. So what we do is we give you access to all of it in one interface. So what this means is I can pull up the grid manager, which always contains every possible column. And you can see that the number of view properties that you see in the view properties panel or window, that's really a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure everything is shown here. And you can see that the grid becomes pretty huge. And we show you everything. We show you grid color, header color, font color, etc. Pretty much everything. You can actually categorize by the column total text color, right? So we give you all of your view-related properties, and probably needless to say that you can edit all of this at once as well. So one of the things I really like to do if I'm a developer and I get a new application that I need to start working on, right, is I would want to kind of get a feel of what the application does, right? I don't know what the application design because I'm not the one who built it. So one of the things you get here is the view selection formula. So when you look at a view selection formula and simply sort by it, really gives you a very good understanding of kind of what this database is made of, right? What are the forms that are the most important? You can see bug to do, bug report. So that's sort of what most of the views are using. You can see that very extensive use of the status field and a bunch of other stuff, right? So this is already really interesting. Now, because we're still dealing with the FlexiGrid here, you can use a number of filter options here. So you can say, show me everything that actually contains bug to do. And then we're just filtering that down, and you can also modify all of this at once. So I could, for example, do a search and replace in the formulas, right? So if I'm replacing a form of some sort, and I can do that directly from here. If I was to just simply change something like any sort of view property, I can do that as well. So I can quickly select multiple views and edit their properties, pretty much all of their properties with just one click. So that's the views module. And then we have what I believe is the most interesting, which is the columns module. And so with the columns module, you get the same representation that we've seen with Action Bar Easy before. So here we give you every column in every view. And it's kind of, again, it's kind of a bit confusing because you get your view represented as a column and then all the columns as entries in those views. So this is what we see. Now, one of the things is that for a larger application like this, you'll see that the whole grid is really huge. So I can actually resize some of this stuff pretty easily, but I could actually do that with a control key held. And when I do so, we will basically zoom out and see much more. Now, this is cool because we have different color schemes. So I can use a color scheme that shows me the sorting type. So for example, you can see that almost every view seems to start with a categorized column, right? I can change this and basically decide to look at the family, which essentially translates to what is it that these columns are showing me, right? Is it icons? Is it responses? Is it colors, etc.? So a lot of ways to look at our stuff. In fact, we can also select what we want to display. So for example, I could show the formula if I wanted to. Yeah? Now, of course, I would need to go in there a little bit more and resize the stuff so that I can see the formulas. But basically, I'm seeing all of my columns, all of their formulas, right? And needless to say that I can actually change all of this. In fact, if I just go back from the formulas, because that can be a bit too much here. So I've got these columns, right? I can deal with them the same way that I did before in Action Bar Easy, is that I can quickly grab one of these and basically deploy it to multiple views, change the order of those views as well. I can delete them from here. I can select columns across different views and edit their properties. And we go even a few steps further here because we'll be able to identify the same columns in the application automatically. So what does that mean? For example, here, I can look at the formula of this column and it says supporter, right? So that's a field value. But I could actually say search and then search for columns that are similar to this currently selected column. And I can decide if I want an exact match or a field match. Now it's kind of the same here. You see that we found this column 11 times in the application. So I actually automatically selected the 11 columns across probably 11 different views. And then I can say that if, I don't know, want to make it nicer, if the supported column doesn't contain anything, then I do none. Otherwise, I just bring out the value. So I'm going to hit apply. And that's how we changed this column across the entire application. Okay. Now we have something that's even better than that. We have the analyze column formulas interface where we can basically analyze all of our column families and say that if the same formula is used across more than one view, then we'll print out the same number. So you can see that everything that's 119 is going to use the exact same formula. And now I can use the Control-T combination to quickly select this column across the entire application. So that's 20 columns. And as I go, I can select tag number 37, tag number 36. So it's very, very quick to make modifications and analyze the same columns across multiple designs. Now, we also have an interface where we show you relationships to shared columns. Now, of course, shared columns kind of defeat the purpose of View Easy. So if you're using View Easy, there's no need for shared columns at all. But you could still see where any shared columns would be used. And then we have the columns by properties interface, which is where we use our FlexiGrid, and we show one entry per column per view, right? So I could, again, here it's similar to the views interface where we show you every single column property, which is a lot. So including the column formula, you can quickly categorize all of your columns by their formulas. Let me show you something really cool. So if I look at the column formulas, I would probably be correct in assuming that columns using the same formula would need to be the same width so that even if the order of columns changes, it doesn't make the experience of switching between views inconsistent. So I can do a second grouping with the column width, and you'll see that, for example, I've got the 25 columns that are using the add created, and you can see that this is the different width settings across those same columns, right? So what do I do if I want to change this? I can quickly open up these categories and then select all those columns and say that the right column width is going to be, I don't know, 10. Yeah, apply, and now we just made that consistent. Yeah, same goes for any sort of colors, etc., etc. So this is really, really powerful stuff. And so when we made our changes, this is how we save it. So we need to do a secondary save operation to make sure that we are not making a mistake. But that is View Easy really in a nutshell. And so View Easy and Action Bar Easy are the tools that we've worked on for a very long time. We thought that they were going to go away, because of the Expages directions, but they're definitely going to come back and come in very, very handy when you're trying to get ready for the HCL Nomad product. We're super excited about them. I actually use them personally as well. And I think that we all have those really old, ugly looking applications, and it would be awesome if they would really stand out on the iPad and look much, much better than they do in the Notes client, right? So those are a good idea to start using as well. And in the next 4 minutes, I did want to quickly mention Design Prop Easy because it's very, very fast and simple. Essentially, what Design Prop Easy is all about is it's about showing you generic design-related properties and letting you edit them for multiple design elements. So the first thing you do is you do an audit, and we give you everything that's not specific to different sorts of and types of design. So here I've got every one of my design elements, and we give you access to, for example, the prohibit refresh flag. Yeah. So quickly categorized by the prohibit refresh flag. And then if you do find this, you can quickly take it out and then apply and reload. And that's pretty much it. So you can quickly modify all of this stuff. You can edit specific generic properties. So we're talking about hide when conditions, prohibit flag, etc. So these are really the basic things that we still need to use every now and then, right? So for example, one thing that can really make a huge mess if you're doing development is the inherit from, because of course a database can inherit its design from a specific template, but so can specific designs, right? So when you copy an agent from somewhere to somewhere, the agent will actually hold on to the inherit from setting. And from that point on, good luck trying to refresh the design using the template, because the agent is going to be waiting to be refreshed from another template. So those are the sorts of things that we deal with in Design Prop Easy. And so that's Design Prop Easy. And like I said, there's 2 more tools, and this is going to be a bit more of a teaser because we're really out of time. And we will talk about these tools tomorrow, which is Console Easy and Agent Easy. I'm not even sure that Console Easy is part of what we call the Easy Dev Plus. Agent Easy is part of that, but Console Easy is also a tool that I believe is super cool for developers. In a sense, this is a tool that gives you access to your live server consoles without having to have console rights, okay? So you'll be able to see what goes on your servers, and you will be able to set some filters on your servers and say, well, I want to debug my agent manager stuff so that I can see what agents I'm running on these servers. Then you can use a regex on that and say, show me only the agent manager. And now I'm basically looking at a specific agent manager related, well, it doesn't hurt if I get my expression right, yeah? So this is still 3 live server consoles that are only showing me what the agent manager is doing. So that's one way to filter your server consoles. This is super cool as an addition to your development processes. It actually has a log analyzer, so I can analyze one or multiple servers, log files for specific events. For example, something like that, which we all know and loathe, right? Like, is there anything like that in my log files? Object variable not set, right? And so we're going through 2 different servers, and we'll either have me in shame because we find something like that, or I'm not going to find anything, but hopefully not going to find anything. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, so yeah, it looks like there is some of those issues going on. So it's a really better way to analyze what's in your log files without having to suffer in the log.nsf design as we all know it. And so this all comes with Console Easy, I believe, and we have a lot of developers who use this tool exclusively to manage their web services and web agents, that you need to have access to your server console to debug them properly, right? And so here you don't even have to have access console rights. Now, if you don't have console rights, you won't be able to send console commands, which you're otherwise able to do here. But still, it's a major added value. And then we have our tool called Agent Easy. And this is part of our Easy Dev Plus. So this is primarily an administrator tool, but what the tool is about is basically we give you all of your agents on an entire server, and we give you all of their agent properties, because of course with agents, it's just really painful, right? Is that you have to deal with them agent by agent. So here we give you all of your agents in all of your databases along with all of their properties. And you're probably not surprised when I say that you can actually modify any single agent property for multiple agents, even if they're located across different databases. So this tool will allow you to identify agents that are supposed to run, but they're not. Identify agents that were signed by a coworker who's no longer there. And so consequently, a lot of these agents just stop running the moment that that person is removed, right? Because they just lost their license to run, so to speak. And so you can at any point mass enable and disable agents, change their runtime settings. We even give you a visual representation of how those agents ran. So you get like this agent timeline where you can look at what happened in the last 24 hours, what are the agents that ran. So it really is a very, very powerful tool. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. So I'd like to encourage you, if you're interested in these two products, do come and attend the session tomorrow. And otherwise, I did not receive any questions whatsoever, which means that we either did a very good job here or a very bad one. We're always looking for feedback, so please let us know if there's anything you'd want to add. If there's any questions coming in later on, you know where to find us. Always happy to help out. And so there is going to be a poll. Please fill that out, whether you felt good or bad, and you know where to find us with any questions. Thank you guys for taking the time out to attend our session today, and hopefully see you tomorrow.